Sydney, it wasn't always this way. There was a time before all the boats, cars, and planes. It was quiet, simple, unrecognizable. No parks, no opera house, no harbor bridge. This Sydney belonged to Indigenous Australians, the Aboriginals. Indigenous cultures of Australia are the oldest living cultural history in the world. They go back at least 50,000 years, and some argue closer than 65,000 years. Prior to the arrival of the Europeans, northern Sydney was occupied by different Aboriginal clans. These clans primarily lived among the foreshores of the harbour. They survived by hunting in the hinterlands of these foreshores, harvesting food from surrounding bushes. These clans were self-sufficient and harmonious, as they did not need to travel far from their establishments, as they were so rich in resources and trade relations with other tribal groups was well established. They moved throughout the country along with the seasons. To ensure survival, they were only required to work around 5 hours a day. With time, they had developed a rich and complex ritual life, customs, spirituality, and law. At the core of all of this was their connection to the land. In today's society, the Aboriginal culture is slowly fading, so we decided to ask a few random people whether or not they could see the Aboriginal culture in everyday life. These are a selection of some of the answers we got.
I guess that's it. I don't really notice it.
I guess a lot of people who live in the city tend to neglect the fact that we're visitors here, and that they tend to forget that this is Aboriginal land.
Right.
So a lot of people just ignore it, I think.
As the average person does not see the Aboriginal culture in everyday life, it must be hard for Aboriginals to balance their own culture with today's society. We asked someone from Aboriginal descent how they maintain the roots of their culture while still adapting to today's society.
Well, it's really difficult because a lot of the people down here, they don't really have that balance at all, because of there's no areas for them to go back to rejuvenate with their culture. For us, where I come from, we still have our elders and our culture is still in place, and so with this generation we're very, very lucky because we're at a crossroads. We have that opportunity for myself where culture is still strong to go back and to still learn the traditional ways and the cultural ways of our people, but we also have that opportunity to come down and to become more educated and to be able to fit into places like Sydney and that. And the local people from this area here, this is their traditional lands, and they're spread out far and wide, and a lot of the elders, because of the lifestyle that they've had to endure over the time, just aren't around anymore because it's such an unhealthy lifestyle, and so it's more fortunate for the people in the remote areas, more so than the ones that have no choice but to live here in Sydney.
As previously mentioned, the Aboriginal culture is slowly fading. The movement towards Sydney must have certain consequences for the traditional lifestyle. Is it even possible for people from Indigenous descent to actually live the traditional lifestyle they were taught for so many generations?
Most definitely. Still living a traditional, semi-traditional lifestyle. Whereas here they really don't have that opportunity, and they have the survival. They're not really coping that well here. And also there's a breakdown of the culture, a breakdown of so it's really a breakdown of their identity, and it really shows the difference between someone from here and someone from up north where I come from is vast.
How important is it for people to understand and respect the history and culture of the Aboriginals?
I think you know, it's important because our people will benefit from it. I mean, we just know out of 22 million people here in Australia, we are only 500,000. And that's such a minute, you know, group of people. It's really important because it actually strengthens us. When people talk about acknowledging the Indigenous people, they think, okay, well, it's about stealing our backyard, claiming our land back. It's not about that. It's about acknowledging the history. Australians, it's really difficult because Australians are really good at just not talking about our history. When they go back as far as 1788, 1770, when Captain Cook came into this area. And it goes back a lot further than that, in fact. And when you go into the education system, their curriculum doesn't talk anything about Indigenous Australia. They've only just now started to incorporate that into the school, into the education system.
So what is the Aboriginal perspective concerning the history of when the Europeans settled in this country?
It's all about reconciliation. We can't be negative because if you're being negative and you have that immediate their backs are up and then they don't want to know about it. So we have to find a diplomatic way to share our history. And so basically what I say to the children is that, you know, we are a multicultural nation now and a better place for it. We're a big country, there's a lot of room for everyone.
In today's modern society, we can see small influences of Aboriginal culture. At every AFL game, the Australian national anthem is performed in both the Australian as well as the Aboriginal language. Other examples of their influence are various exhibitions you can see around Australia involving Aboriginal art. Awareness has grown at all levels, from schools and local governments to federal politicians and mining companies, that Indigenous people have a special culture which needs to be maintained. So what can be done to raise their awareness about Aboriginal culture and help all Australians appreciate their rich history?
I think they should make it a public holiday for all Australians, like Australia Day, Anzac Day. They make it, if people can have the day off work because they're celebrating National Aboriginals Day, maybe it'll let them think more about why are we having this holiday today, you know? We need the government to come in and do something like that.
The fact of the matter is that Aboriginals have suffered great injustice since 1788, which mainstream Australia just isn't aware of. In 1967, more than 90% of the Australians voted yes to fix the issue of not recognizing the Aboriginals. It is important to teach the history of Australia and its Indigenous culture. History is much deeper and further reaching than one would think, and responsible education needs to encourage broader appreciation for the diversity of history and culture. To help recognize and understand diversity, we need empathy. As such, it is an important prerequisite for achieving reconciliation in any society. If one can develop the knowledge of why cultures are so different, it will help develop empathy and encourage an appreciation for diversity, and hopefully undermine growth of discriminative perspectives. Just recognition, any recognition will go a long way. So, while keeping this in mind, where do we start?